This video will be a review of the Pocket 4K / comparison to my previous camera, which was an A7S Mark II. First, let's look at image quality. So here's a few comparison shots between the A7S and the P4K. Each shot starts out with the A7S and then transitions to the Pocket 4K clip. After looking at these test clips, I'm really impressed with how easy it is to grade the Pocket 4K and how much more color information there is that I could pull out. And for that reason alone, it's worth switching to the Pocket 4K, just to avoid fiddling with the A7S footage that's always breaking down when you grade it. And the A7S footage usually has really terrible color blotching and that's skin tones and shadows, and you overexpose it so you get less noise in the shadows, but then when you try to bring back the highlights, you have banding in the highlights and color artifacts in the highlights. So overall, I'm incredibly impressed with the image quality of the Pocket 4K, and I never want to use compressed footage again. So I'm going to talk about a few things that I really like about the Pocket 4K. USB-C storage media is really handy for workflow, just plugging the drive directly into the computer and editing off of that. One thing I was really excited about with the Pocket 4K is the full-size Hdmi port, because I know on the A7S, the mini or micro HDMI port often breaks, so it was nice being able to use a full-size HDMI cable to the EVF that I'm using currently on the Pocket 4K. Having this locking power input is really nice for using on a rig or in a studio situation. The ability to use display LUTs directly on the camera is life-changing, kind of. I never had this on my A7S. I never had an external monitor that would allow this either. So this has really improved my lighting skills and how I'm setting up a shot, knowing if a shot is going to work beforehand. Whereas with the A7S, they have a built-in log to 709 LUT that you can use, but it's still pretty low contrast, and you still have a hard time judging what the lighting's really like and what your shot's going to look like after a grade. Whereas with this Pocket 4K, I just built a custom LUT in Resolve with a color space transform from Blackmagic film to Rec 709 and then the Kodak 2383 LUT. And I exported that and put it on the Pocket 4K, and it's a game changer. It's really useful. The high frame rate button on this camera is really handy. That in conjunction with the shutter angle instead of shutter speed settings. When you switch to your high frame rate mode, your shutter speed stays the same in relation to your frames per second. Just one button, I adjust the aperturing to bring the exposure back up, and I'm ready to shoot in my alternate frame rate, and everything's perfect. If I want just a slow motion insert shot, pop it back out and I can get 24 FPS shots of dialogue or whatever. Really handy feature. It really enables things that you couldn't really do in tight situations with the A7S. So like everyone else has said, the battery life is pretty abysmal. It's noticeably better when recording to an SD card. So if I'm trying to shoot a long time lapse, I'll put the SD card in because the write speed is super slow with a time lapse, so you don't need the high speed SSD. And that's good, so you don't have to switch out batteries in the middle of a time lapse as often. But it's pretty annoying switching batteries all the time, so I'm planning on building a rig that has probably a V-lock battery on it, so I can power it for hours or half a day without worrying about batteries, and also get some extra stability. And that brings up another issue, which is camera stability. It's not really usable handheld. I'll do test shots handheld. You can get away doing handheld in 48 or 60 FPS and playing that back at 24. But playing back handheld footage in real time is not really usable. Unless you're standing still, you can get handheld. You cannot get handheld while walking with this camera, really. If you have any questions about switching from Sony to Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, leave a comment. I'll probably see it because I only have 60 subscribers. So, thanks for watching. That's cold.